So, I recently went through something I still shake my head about. You ever think your life is finally settling down, only for one single neighbor to turn it upside down? That's what happened to me. And it all started with a trash can. The first time it happened, I thought it was an accident. The sharp crack of plastic shattering ripped through the morning silence like a gunshot. I rushed outside, coffee still steaming in my hand, and saw my brand new trash bin split down the middle like someone had taken an axe to it. Garbage spilled across my driveway, banana peels, soggy cereal boxes, coffee grounds, all scattered like confetti in the dawn light. And there she was, Brenda Whitmore, my neighbor, 52 years old, driving a pearl-white Escalade worth more than most people's houses. She rolled down her window with a fake little frown on her face and said, "Oh my, these streets are so narrow. I hope you weren't too attached to that old thing." Old thing? I just bought it for $23 at Home Depot. My kids, Emma and Tyler, stood in the window, watching their dad crawl around in pajamas, cleaning up coffee filters from the street while Brenda drove away like nothing happened. My daughter wouldn't even meet my eyes. My son just shook his head. That first week, it happened 3 more times. Same routine. 6:15 sharp, the low rumble of her oversized engine, then the sickening crunch of plastic, and silence as she sped away. By Friday, I wasn't just suspicious, I was sure. And then my elderly neighbor across the street, Mrs. Olivia, confirmed it. She spoke in her careful, accented English. She takes the long way around Marcus. Every day. She could drive the other side, plenty of room, but she comes close to your can every time. That's when it clicked. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. I tried to reason with her. One afternoon, I caught her on her daily power walk, the same one she bragged about like it was a public service. I said, "Hey, about the trash can situation." She cut me off with a smile so sweet it could rot your teeth. "Marcus, I understand you're new to community living. These streets were designed for normal-sized vehicles, not oversized containers blocking traffic flow. Perhaps you should consider placement timing adjustments." Placement timing adjustments. Like there was a magical hour where the garbage truck didn't need the can at the curb. That night, I sat down and started researching. Municipal codes, HOA bylaws, property rights. Turns out, trash cans placed within 3 feet of the curb on collection day, their personal property fully protected by city ordinance. And the HOA, they had no rules about placement timing or materials. None. By the end of that month, I'd replaced 4 cans. $92 gone. More than that, my patience was wearing thin. Emma told me she hated walking to the bus stop because the mean lady was always watching. Tyler asked me quietly one night if we'd have to move again, like we had after the divorce. My custody evaluator was taking notes about neighborhood instability, and I knew it was being held against me. That's when I noticed the smirk. Brenda started making direct eye contact during her morning demolition runs. Her lips curled into this little smile that said, "I know what I'm doing, and you can't stop me." Game on. 2 weeks into October, she raised the stakes. I came home from a job site and found a certified letter waiting. You know, the kind that makes your stomach drop before you even open it. The paper was thick, the ink still smelled fresh. It read, "Improper trash receptacle placement creating traffic hazard. Section 473. Violation. Remedy required within 72 hours or face $50 in daily fines." My hands shook as I held it, not because I was scared of the fine, but because I realized just how far she was willing to go. That evening, I sat at my desk under the glow of a single lamp and dove into city code like I was prepping for the electrician's exam all over again. Hours passed, and then I hit gold. The law was crystal clear. Trash cans must be placed within 3 feet of the curb. HOA jurisdiction ends at the property line. They had no authority here. None. That's when I decided, if Brenda wanted to play games, I'd play too, but my game wouldn't be petty, it would be thorough, documented, bulletproof. I ordered a Ring doorbell camera, set it perfectly to capture her morning routine. $47 for the best investment of my life. I scheduled a professional survey to confirm my can was in the right spot. Even asked Mrs. Olivia, hands trembling, to sign a written statement. "I don't want trouble," she whispered. "But this isn't right." Meanwhile, Brenda turned into a full-blown propaganda machine. She posted on Nextdoor about reckless homeowners endangering children. She called me a dangerous corner obstacle. The comments section turned into a battlefield. Some people supported her, most didn't. But she wasn't done. She never was. One morning, a buddy from City Hall, Dave, called me. "Marcus," he chuckled, "your neighborhood has an epidemic of insomniacs. 4 separate complaints came in about your trash can. Different names, different witnesses. All submitted at 2:47 a.m. and all written by the same person. You want to guess who?" I didn't need to guess. By Thursday's board meeting, I'd compiled a folder so thick it could choke a horse. Ordinances, surveys, camera footage, written statements. When they called for old business, I stood up, my voice steady but loud. "I'd like to address the violation. Notice regarding trash can placement." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Brenda's hands shook when she reached for her water glass. The room went silent. I read the law word for word, showed my survey results, displayed the witness statements. Then I casually mentioned that a property rights attorney found selective enforcement patterns particularly interesting. Brenda's face went pale. The board president cleared his throat, fumbling with his tie. "Well, this requires further review. We'll table this matter pending additional consideration." Translation: they had nothing. But Brenda wasn't finished, not by a long shot. Everyone thought it was over after that board meeting. The silence in the room, the pale look on her face, the way the president fumbled with his tie. But deep down, I knew better. People like Brenda don't retreat, they regroup. The very next morning, I saw it. Not her usual reckless ramming, not the crunch of plastic against steel. No, this time she slowed down. Creep speed past my driveway. Her eyes didn't even flick toward me standing there with my coffee. Instead, she stared at the trash can itself, like a general studying a battlefield. She was planning her next move. And oh, did she have moves. November came in cold, and so did her attacks. I'd barely had time to celebrate my little victory before new violation notices started showing up in my mailbox like clockwork. Grass height, 2.75 inches instead of 2.5. Mailbox paint faded to unauthorized weathered navy. 3 tiny tears in a window screen you'd need a magnifying glass to even see. Each violation carried a $50 fine with a 10-day deadline. It was harassment disguised as procedure. And she was good at it. She'd combed through the bylaws like a prosecutor prepping for trial, finding every obscure rule she could weaponize. But I wasn't just sitting on my hands. One Saturday afternoon, I walked the neighborhood with a measuring tape and my camera. Gerald Thornfield's grass, 3 inches, easy. Mrs. Patterson's mailbox, faded almost identical to mine. Half the houses on Maple Street had screen damage from the last hailstorm. Funny thing, not a single violation for any of them. Just me, always me. That night, I spread the photos across my kitchen table like evidence in a crime drama. My kids sat nearby, Tyler trying to help while Emma rolled her eyes at the ridiculousness of it all. "Dad, she's obsessed with you," Emma muttered. "It's creepy." And she was right. Still, I knew one thing. Bureaucrats hate being caught in their own trap. So I filed a formal complaint against the board itself, documenting every example of selective enforcement. Either enforce the rules equally, or admit you're targeting me. Neither option was good for them. And yet, the part that made me laugh, even in the middle of all this madness, came from the most unexpected place. I was at Home Depot, grabbing supplies for a job, when I bumped into Dale Kowalski. Old-school contractor, guy, been pouring concrete longer than I've been alive. We were leaning on the contractor's desk, talking about the situation. I told him how many cans I'd replaced. His face lit up with this grin that told me he'd just thought of something clever. "Marcus," he said, stirring his coffee with a paint stick, You know there's nothing in the city code about what your trash can has to be made of. Plastic, metal, concrete doesn't matter. As long as it holds garbage and fits the size requirements, you're golden. The idea hit me like a lightning bolt. A concrete trash can. Legal, functional, but indestructible. A fortress in plain sight. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about it. About Brenda's smug little smirk every time she drove away after destroying my property. About the look on her face if her own car ended up worse off. By Friday, I'd made up my mind. Emma and Tyler helped me in the garage. Classic rock played on my old paint-splattered radio, and the smell of setting cement filled the air. It reminded me of working with my dad as a kid, pouring our basement floor. Something permanent, something solid. We mixed 60 pounds of concrete, lined the inside of a standard plastic shell, reinforced it with steel rebar. Drainage holes kept it functional. On the outside, it looked completely normal. On the inside, it was a tank. We laughed through the whole process. Tyler called it the fortress. Emma said it was extra, but I caught the smile tugging at her lips. For once, they weren't embarrassed. For once, they were in on the joke. By Sunday, it was ready. Smooth, gray, unbreakable, my secret weapon sitting quietly by the garage. Monday morning, I rolled it out to the curb like I had 100 times before. Same spot, same placement, nothing unusual. Except this time, it wasn't plastic waiting to be smashed. At exactly 6:15, I heard it, that familiar rumble. Brenda's oversized engine echoing down the street. My pulse quickened. I stood by the kitchen window, mug in hand, watching. She approached slowly, suspicious already. She must have noticed something felt different. But suspicion doesn't equal caution, not for her. She picked up speed. 15 miles an hour. Enough force to split plastic in half. The impact shook the air. But instead of the sick crunch of breaking plastic, there was a dull, solid thunk. Then a screech, the sound of metal against concrete. I saw her running board bend like tin foil. My trash can, still standing, not even a scratch. Brenda froze in her SUV, staring at it like she couldn't believe what had happened. She revved her engine, tried again from a different angle. Same result. More damage to her Escalade, zero damage to my fortress. I sipped my coffee, heat warming my palms, and smiled. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had the upper hand. But here's the thing about people like Brenda, they don't just stop when they lose, they double down. And I had no idea just how far she was about to go. The neighborhood started whispering almost immediately. You could feel it in the way curtains shifted at sunrise, in the smirks exchanged between neighbors when Brenda's pearl-white Escalade limped past with fresh dents. By Wednesday, her SUV already looked like it had driven through a battlefield. Scratches down the side, running board bent, bumper spiderwebbed with cracks, and every single wound was self-inflicted. The irony was delicious. Her weapon had become her weakness. I didn't have to brag about it. Everyone saw the proof with their own eyes. Even the teenagers on Elm Street turned it into a game, betting quarters on how much damage she'd do each morning. Tyler came home grinning one day. Dad, the kids at school are calling her the Demolition Queen. And our can, the Fortress. Emma rolled her eyes, pretending she was embarrassed, but later that night I caught her showing a friend the ring footage on her phone. For the first time in months, the kids weren't dreading Brenda. They were laughing. And that laugh, it mattered more to me than I could admit. But Brenda wasn't laughing. She became obsessed. I'd see her Escalade creeping past at odd hours, headlights dimmed. Sometimes I'd catch the reflection of a flashlight in my driveway at midnight. One morning, Mrs. Olivia called me, her voice shaking. "Marcus, last night she was in your yard. She had a scale. She was weighing your trash can." I actually had to sit down. The image of Brenda crouched in her blazer, hauling a bathroom scale to measure my garbage bin in the dark, it was absurd. Absurd, but also terrifying. Because obsession is dangerous. By Thursday, the obsession grew teeth. A knock came at my door, city building inspector. He looked tired, clipboard in hand. Got a complaint about unauthorized concrete structures, something about safety violations. I led him around to the can. He tapped it once, jotted notes, and shook his head. It's a garbage container, not a foundation. No permits needed. Whoever filed this is wasting our time. We both knew who filed it. But the escalation didn't stop there. Days later, a new letter from the HOA arrived, this one demanding immediate access to inspect my property for modifications. My stomach knotted when I read it. It wasn't about the trash can anymore. It was about power. Luckily, I'd done my homework. I'd studied cases like Narrett v. Lakeside Village. Courts had ruled HOAs can't just waltz onto private property without cause. So I wrote back politely, no entry without a court order or emergency. If they wanted to inspect my can, they could look from the sidewalk like everyone else. The silence that followed felt sweeter than victory. Meanwhile, Brenda's escalade turned into a rolling advertisement for my handiwork. Every dent, every scratch was proof of her obsession. By the end of that week, she'd racked up nearly $800 in damage. My can, a couple scuff marks, almost proud battle scars. The neighborhood noticed. People started whispering in grocery aisles, chatting at bus stops. That crazy woman keeps hitting the same trash can. Even Mrs. Rodriguez, who never liked me much, admitted she was timing Brenda's morning routine for entertainment. But the moment that changed everything came from Patricia Lopez, the only board member with a shred of integrity. She pulled me aside one evening, her voice low. "Marcus, you need to know something. Brenda's been meeting privately with Gerald. She's pushing for expanded authority, property inspections, contractor background checks, even material restrictions. And Marcus, she's been pushing maintenance contracts too. Hard." That one word froze me. Contracts. That night, curiosity turned into investigation. I dove into public records, cross-referencing board meeting minutes with county contract databases. What I found stopped me cold. Whitmore Construction LLC, formed 6 months ago. President, Richard Whitmore. Partial owner, Brenda herself. My eyes scanned faster. Maintenance contracts, 7 in total. Playground repairs, landscaping, sidewalk touch-ups, all awarded to Whitmore Construction. All approved by Brenda. Total value, over $23,000. And the bids, every single one was just $50 to $100 lower than the competition. Just enough to look legit. Just enough to win. It wasn't coincidence, it was rigged. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. My so-called trash can war wasn't just about pettiness. It was cover for something much darker. Brenda wasn't just a bully with a clipboard. She was running a scam, using harassment and intimidation to keep neighbors too distracted, too scared to notice the money funneling into her own pocket. In my concrete trash can, it wasn't just an act of resistance, it was a threat to her entire empire. I printed everything. Contracts, business filings, bank deposits, made digital backups. Emailed it all to Amanda Sterling, a property rights attorney I trusted. My message was simple: urgent review requested. Possible criminal implications. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. Not because the fight was over, but because I finally understood it. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about 127 homeowners being bled dry. This was about fraud. And Brenda had no idea the storm that was coming for her. Tuesday morning, I stood at my kitchen window, coffee mug in hand, watching Brenda line up for her usual demolition run. Her Escalade rattled like it had been through a war zone, because it had. Cracks in the bumper, running board bent at a crooked angle, headlight flickering. And still, she went for it. The thunk of steel meeting concrete echoed down the street. My trash can didn't flinch. Her SUV coughed, sputtered, and limped away like a wounded animal. But for the first time since this started, I wasn't thinking about trash cans anymore. I was thinking about justice, because now I knew the truth. This wasn't about HOA bylaws or community rules. It was about money, fraud, and Brenda was desperate enough to destroy everything in her path to protect it. That night, my garage turned into a war room. Workbenches cleared, folding tables set up, evidence boards taped to the walls with red string connecting contracts, dates, and names like something out of a detective show. By 7 p.m., my team arrived. Mrs. Olivia with her thermos of jasmine tea, Jim Torres still in his maintenance uniform, tool belt jangling, Patricia Lopez with a stack of board documents, and Dale Kowalski, the concrete man himself, carrying donuts and grinning like this was a birthday party instead of a neighborhood sting operation. I looked around at them, my unlikely little coalition, and felt something shift. I wasn't alone anymore. "All right," I said, slapping the timeline chart onto the wall. "Here, what we're dealing with." The evidence was damning. 7 contracts, $23,000 funneled into Brenda's family company, 47 documented harassment incidents, 53 collision attempts, 1 Escalade that looked like a junkyard reject. Patricia whistled low, shaking her head. I knew something was wrong with those budgets, but this is criminal. Jim studied the photos of Brenda's SUV damage. She's unhinged and dangerous. But Marcus, if you've got all this, why hasn't the board acted? Because Gerald, protecting her, Patricia answered before I could. And because until now, nobody had the guts to push back. We spent hours planning. Jim would monitor Brenda's retaliation attempts. Mrs. Olivia would gather neighbor support door to door. Patricia would work the board from the inside. Dale would be our technical consultant. And me, I'd be the one presenting the case when the time came. But timing mattered. Move too soon, Brenda could destroy evidence. Wait too long, she could cover her tracks. Amanda Sterling, my attorney, warned me, "You're not just dealing with harassment anymore. This is fraud, maybe embezzlement. And if you want it to stick, you'll need airtight proof and overwhelming public pressure." So that's what we built, pressure. The next morning, I started knocking on doors. Presentation folder in hand, ring footage on my tablet. And you know what? The response was overwhelming. 89 signatures supporting property rights, 34 demanding financial audits, 12 neighbors volunteering to speak at the next board meeting. People who'd stayed silent for years suddenly found their voices. Mrs. Rodriguez slammed her door at first, then opened it again 5 minutes later to sign with shaking hands. "She fined me once for leaving my garbage out 15 minutes early," she muttered in Spanish. 15 minutes? Who lives like this? Word spread fast, faster than I expected. Within 3 days, a Facebook group called Pinewood Gardens Transparency had nearly 70 members. Neighbors shared stories of selective enforcement, harassment, shady budgets. Someone even posted a time-lapse video of Brenda's morning demolition runs, set to circus music. It went viral across half the county. Meanwhile, my trash can stood tall. Each new collision left Brenda's SUV looking worse and my can looking prouder. By Friday, her insurance claim must have been sky-high. But I wasn't celebrating, because I knew desperation was coming. And I was right. Saturday night, just after midnight, I was jolted awake by the hiss of spray paint. I rushed to the window. There she was crouched beside my can, the motion light exposing her like a thief in a spotlight. Orange letters spelled one word across the concrete: move. She darted back into her Escalade and sped off, tires squealing. I just stood there staring. The next morning, I laughed while pressure washing it clean, but the cameras had caught everything. License plate, face, paint can, every detail in crisp HD. Then Monday brought the gas company. Some anonymous complaint claimed I'd been digging dangerously close to utility lines. The inspector spent 2 hours with his scanner, apologizing the whole time. "Marcus, there's nothing here. Whoever called this in either has vision problems or a grudge." We both knew which it was. And then came the moment that turned annoyance into fury. Tuesday morning, Jim found me at the hardware store, his face pale. "Marcus, she's hired private security, $200 a day to watch your house. My buddy's cousin works for the company. They said Brenda claimed you were a threat to community safety. A threat, me. I went home, looked at my kids, and realized something chilling. Brenda wasn't just trying to break me financially. She wanted to ruin me completely. And I couldn't let that happen. Wednesday morning, I found the proof that Brenda had finally crossed a line she could never uncross. Emma came home from school with red eyes. She'd overheard Brenda whispering to another parent in the pickup lane, loud enough for her to catch every word. "That man is a dangerous influence," Brenda had said. "Not the kind of role model children should be around." The racial undertones weren't even subtle. Emma cried at the dinner table, asking me why the mean lady hated us so much. Tyler sat quiet, fists clenched. I tucked them both into bed that night with a smile I didn't feel, promising it would all work out. But inside, I was burning. That's when I made the call. Bate Morrison, retired police detective, now a private investigator. $200 a day to watch Brenda as closely as she watched us. To document her harassment with the kind of detail that would hold up in court. I needed someone with experience, someone who understood escalation patterns. And escalation came fast. Friday evening, Tyler was working on his bike in the driveway when he called out. "Dad, what's this thing?" He was holding a black device, small and square, blinking faint red lights. It had been magnetically attached to the underside of my work truck. A GPS tracker, professional grade. My blood ran cold. I photographed it from every angle, bagged it carefully, and drove straight to the police station. Officer Derek Martinez, a man who'd seen just about everything, looked at me with weary seriousness. "Mr. Holloway, this isn't a neighborhood dispute anymore. Unauthorized surveillance, stalking, harassment, we're building a criminal file here." The words sank in, criminal file. And while the police were opening theirs, I opened one too. Insurance fraud. Turns out Brenda had filed a $3,200 claim, telling her insurance company that all her damage came from a road hazard. But my Ring camera had captured every single collision. 53 attempts, all deliberate. Video evidence, timestamps, witnesses. When the investigator from State Farm showed up, I didn't just hand him footage. I handed him a package. Photos, logs, statements, professional analysis. His response was immediate. "This isn't road hazard damage. This is intentional destruction of property. We'll be denying the claim and referring this to our fraud unit." Brenda didn't know it yet, but the trap was closing. Meanwhile, the neighborhood was buzzing like a hive. Our Facebook group grew to 94 members. Neighbors were posting their own stories of Brenda's harassment, rose bushes, sidewalk chalk, mailbox paint. Some even admitted they'd been too afraid to speak before. For the first time, it wasn't just me standing against her. It was all of us. But Brenda, she was unraveling. Saturday morning, she rammed the can again. Attempt number 57. This time her bumper tore clean off, clattering into my driveway like a broken jaw. I watched her crawl out of the SUV in her business blazer, scrambling to collect the fragments while half the neighborhood peeked through their curtains. It would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. By Sunday, my evidence compilation was complete. 3 bankers' boxes of documents, photos, contracts, fraud reports, and security footage. Amanda Sterling said it best on the phone that night. "Marcus, this isn't going to be a board meeting. It's going to be a public execution." But desperation has a smell, and Brenda reeked of it. Monday morning, 12 hours before the board meeting, I got a voicemail from Gerald Thornfield himself. His voice cracked like gravel under pressure. "Marcus, we're calling an emergency closed-door session. Liability concerns, community safety issues. Please understand this is urgent." Through the blinds of the community center office, I could see them. Gerald, Brenda, another board member, and a lawyer I didn't recognize. Animated gestures. Brenda waving papers like surrender flags, Gerald tugging at his tie like a noose. Patricia Lopez texted me from inside. She's claiming you made threats. Wants emergency powers to seize your property. Their lawyer looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. The cover-up was as clumsy as one of Brenda's collisions. Somebody had even backdated disclosure forms for Whitmore Construction, but digital timestamps don't lie. And if Brenda thought that was enough to save her, she had another thing coming. Because Tuesday night, when that board meeting began, I wasn't just showing up with documents. I was showing up with a community behind me. And with the police watching her every move. By Tuesday evening, Pinewood Gardens looked more like the scene of a protest than a quiet suburban neighborhood. Cars lined both sides of Maple Street. Neighbors streamed toward the community center carrying folding chairs and homemade signs. Channel 7's news van pulled up at 5:30 sharp, followed by Channel 12 and a Metro Weekly reporter. Inside, the air buzzed with tension. The fluorescent lights flickered. The smell of burnt coffee and nervous sweat thickened the atmosphere until you could chew it. The room was designed for 118 residents crammed inside, with another 30 spilling into the hall. Cameras clicked. Tripods were being set up. This wasn't a meeting, it was a trial. And Brenda was the defendant. She walked in late, dressed in black like she was going to a funeral. Maybe she was. Her hands shook so badly she had to grip her folder with both fists. Gerald followed close behind, his tie crooked, his face blotchy with stress. Their attorney, a man named Masterson, carried himself like he'd rather be defending arsonists than babysitting Brenda Whitmore. The intimidation fell flat. Neighbors weren't scared anymore, they were ready. Gerald cleared his throat, voice cracking. We'll now hear public comments regarding recent concerns. That was my cue. I stood carrying presentation boards like a prosecutor walking toward the jury. At my side, Mrs. Olivia clutched her witness statements. Jim Torres held the maintenance records. Patricia Lopez had financial ledgers stacked in her arms. And beside the podium, my trash can, the fortress, rolled in as Exhibit A. The symbolism wasn't subtle. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steady but carrying through the silence. This isn't about a trash can. It isn't about bylaws. This is about accountability, corruption, and stopping abuse before it destroys our community. I laid it out piece by piece. The ring footage, 57 deliberate collisions. The GPS tracker, the spray paint, the anonymous gas complaints. The insurance fraud claim, denied and flagged for investigation. Then came the financials. I clicked the projector remote and the screen lit up with contract after contract, each one flowing straight into Whitmore Construction. Over $23,000 of your dues, I said, pointing at the numbers, funneled directly into Brenda's family company. 7 contracts, 7 approvals, 0 disclosures. The room erupted, gasps, shouts. Mrs. Rodriguez stood up, waving her arms. She fined me for roses, and all this time she was stealing from us. Neighbors shouted in English and Spanish. The teenagers clapped like they were at a concert. Even Gerald's face turned the color of wet paper. And then came the knockout blow. At exactly 6:45, the back doors opened. Officer Derek Martinez stepped inside, holding a folder. His badge caught the fluorescent light. Sorry to interrupt, he announced, voice cutting through the chaos, but I have a warrant to serve regarding insurance fraud and stalking charges. The silence that followed was absolute. You could hear Brenda's pen tapping against the table, frantic Morse code for panic. Her face drained of color. Masterson whispered furiously in her ear. Gerald looked like he was having chest pains. And then Brenda broke. She shot to her feet, eyes wild. This is harassment, she screamed, voice rising to a pitch that rattled the windows. These people don't understand community standards. They come in here, they ruin everything, and you all just let them. The racial undertones weren't lost on anyone. Channel 7's cameras caught every word. Mrs. Olivia gasped so loud it silenced even the back row. I stayed calm, letting her dig her own grave. Mrs. Whitmore, I said evenly. You destroyed your SUV, stalked my family, committed fraud, and stole from this community. All over a $23 trash can. The room exploded. Applause, shouting, neighbors on their feet. Brenda lunged at my evidence boards, trying to rip them apart, before Jim and two others restrained her gently but firmly. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks. She was sobbing, shouting nonsense, accusing half the room of betrayal. Patricia Lopez seized the moment. She stood tall, her voice clear as a bell. I move for the immediate suspension of Brenda Whitmore from this board, pending investigation and audit. The vote was unanimous, 4-0, even Gerald didn't try to save her. And just like that, it was over. Brenda sat handcuffed to her chair, her escalade in ruins outside, her empire collapsing in front of the cameras. The neighborhood bully who once ruled with fear was now a spectacle of humiliation, her power stripped in a single night. Justice served, concrete cold. But the fallout, that was still coming. Within 48 hours of that board meeting meltdown, Brenda's world collapsed faster than her Escalade suspension under concrete impact. Tuesday morning, a resignation letter hit every inbox in the community. 2 bitter lines typed in Times New Roman, claiming hostile work environment and personal attacks. Nobody bought it. By Thursday, the district attorney filed charges: insurance fraud, falsifying documents, harassment. 6 months jail time on the table, $5,000 in fines. By Friday, Whitmore Construction's license was suspended, their contracts voided, their little empire dismantled piece by piece. The financial audit came back brutal. $47,000 siphoned from homeowner dues. $47,000. Within a week, every resident received a refund check, $370 each, just in time for Christmas. Best holiday bonus Pinewood Gardens ever saw. But the real kicker, Richard Whitmore himself. He called me late one evening. His voice was hollow, drained. The settlement check is in the mail, he whispered. $12,500, as agreed. He hesitated, then added, Brenda's moving to Florida, to live with her sister. I just can't keep doing this. I almost felt sorry for him, almost. But then I remembered the GPS tracker. The spray paint. My daughter crying at the dinner table because of Brenda's lies, and that sympathy dried up like rain on hot asphalt. The neighborhood, though it transformed overnight. Patricia Lopez was elected board president in a landslide, running on one word: transparency. She pushed through reforms like a woman on a mission. Conflict of interest disclosures, monthly financial reports, public contractor bidding, things we never thought we'd see in our little cookie-cutter community. The first project under her watch, a playground renovation, fully funded with the recovered embezzlement money. I'll never forget watching Emma and Tyler help design new swings, neighbors painting fences together, kids laughing on equipment Brenda would have called a safety hazard. It felt like vindication carved in steel and laughter. The ripples went beyond Pinewood Gardens. Holloway v. Pinewood Gardens HOA became case law. Lawyers cited it in a dozen property rights battles across Ohio. It even reached the state legislature. The HOA Accountability Act passed, requiring audits and disclosures statewide. Investigators called it the gold standard for suburban oversight. Channel 7's coverage. It won a regional Emmy. Reporter Sarah Kim still calls me sometimes, asking for commentary on HOA reform. She says Brenda's footage, the 57 collisions, the screaming meltdown, the arrest, gets replayed at journalism conferences as the perfect example of when the cameras catch the truth. And that trash can, that fortress, it became a legend. We moved it to the community center lobby, bolted down with a bronze plaque, Property Rights Protected, 2023. New homeowners are told the story at orientation. Contractors stop by just to see the famous, indestructible can. What started as an act of desperation became a monument to resilience. But what mattered most wasn't the refunds or the headlines. It was the healing. We turned the worst year of our lives into a festival. Every September now, Pinewood Gardens hosts the Concrete Can Days. Barbecue competitions, bounce houses, live music. Families from 3 neighborhoods come to celebrate the day we stood up together against corruption. Last year, more than 800 people came. Kids wore t-shirts with little trash can logos. Tyler ran the raffle booth. Emma rolled her eyes at the silliness but secretly loved it. The settlement money, I used part of it to start a scholarship, the Marcus Holloway Property Rights Fund. It helps students who stand up against injustice, who find creative solutions where others see dead ends. So far, 4 kids have gone to college because of it. And one of those essays, Emma's, she wrote about fighting corruption with concrete evidence. It got her into 3 journalism programs. Tyler started a YouTube channel called Suburban Justice, documenting HOA disputes across the Midwest. He's got the fire of an investigative reporter, just in teenage form. He tells me one day he's going to be bigger than Karma Tailies. I don't doubt it. Even my custody battle turned. The evaluator noted that the kids had seen their father stand up for what was right, using law, patience, and community support, not anger, not surrender. The judge ruled in my favor. Joint custody secured. My business grew, too. Neighbors who'd once whispered about me being the problem now recommended me as the guy who gets results. Turns out, the same persistence that took down an HOA bully works wonders in wiring projects. Sometimes, David really does beat Goliath. But only if David has evidence, allies, and about 60 pounds of steel-reinforced concrete. And in the end, that was the real victory. Not Brenda's downfall, not the refunds or the headlines, but the reminder that bullies crumble when people stand together. That dignity doesn't always look like silence. Sometimes, it looks like a trash can standing firm against a $60,000 SUV. And that lesson, that one's permanent, just like the concrete. So I recently went through something I never thought would change my life. And yet, one neighbor, one trash can, one concrete choice, it all rewrote my story. Because when Brenda finally left Pinewood Gardens, silence fell over the neighborhood like the first snowfall of winter. No more ramming engines at dawn. No more violation letters waiting like traps in my mailbox. No more whispers about who she'd target next. Just quiet, peace. But here's the truth about quiet. It gives you space to think. I thought about Emma, writing her college essay on fighting corruption with concrete evidence. About Tyler, editing videos for his Suburban Justice channel, laughing as he replayed footage of Brenda's 57 collisions. I thought about Mrs. Olivia, who once trembled signing a statement, now standing tall at board meetings, her voice steady. I thought about a community that had once lived in fear, now laughing together at a festival called Concrete Can Days. And I realized something. Brenda thought she was teaching me a lesson about power, about knowing my place, about what happens when you challenge authority. But the real lesson, she taught it to herself. Because the escalade she weaponized became her undoing. The bylaws she twisted exposed her corruption. The intimidation she wielded brought a community together against her. Every strike she aimed at me only made her weaker, and every time she knocked down a plastic can, she built the legend of the concrete one. Sometimes karma doesn't whisper. Sometimes it roars like an engine at 6:15 in the morning and collides headfirst with the truth. The neighborhood healed in ways I couldn't have predicted. Patricia Lopez rebuilt the board into something transparent and fair. Our HOA, once a punchline, became a model for others. People moved here because they'd read about us, seen the Emmy-winning news coverage, wanted to be part of a place that had survived corruption and come out stronger. And that trash can, that fortress, it became more than concrete, it became a reminder. Every time I walk past it in the community center lobby, plaque gleaming beneath the lights, I pause. The kids point to it when they bring friends over, saying proudly, "That's ours." Contractors take selfies with it like it's a monument. And new neighbors hear the story their first week here, wide-eyed, shaking their heads at the insanity of it all. But for me, it's not about the fame. It's not about the plaque. It's about the promise I made to myself in the middle of that fight, that I would not let fear define us, that my kids would see their father stand firm, even when it meant standing alone, that truth, patience, and persistence could outlast even the loudest bully in the biggest SUV. And that promise, it changed everything. It gave me back my dignity. It gave my kids pride in who their father was. It gave this community the courage to hold its leaders accountable. Sometimes, the strongest walls aren't built of concrete or steel. They're built of people who refuse to back down. And here's the quiet reflection I'll leave you with. Life will always have Brendas. People who believe their money, their title, or their false authority gives them the right to control others. They'll push. They'll bully. They'll try to make you small. But sometimes, all it takes to stop them is standing firm, refusing to move, becoming, in your own way, a fortress. My fight started with a trash can. Yours might start with something different: a workplace bully, a dishonest landlord, a corrupt board. But the lesson's the same. Don't underestimate the power of patience, evidence, and allies. Don't underestimate what happens when the quiet voices in a neighborhood decide to speak. And don't underestimate yourself, because even an ordinary electrician, a tired single dad, can bring down a woman who thought she was untouchable. So yeah, I went through something ridiculous, something exhausting, something I wouldn't wish on anyone. But in the end, justice was served, cold, heavy, and reinforced with steel. And every time I see that concrete trash can, standing tall in the middle of Pinewood Gardens, I smile. Because that's not just a trash can. That's proof. Proof that no matter how loud the bully, no matter how big the SUV, sometimes the little guy wins. And when he does, the whole community wins with him. Every HOA has a story on HOA headaches. You'll hear the ones they tried to bury. Subscribe today.